Guys, how are you doing today?
Doing good. Right.
Hey, it's so nice to be here. I'm gonna just try to maybe lower this a little. Okay. Can you hear me okay?
Oh yeah.
All right. Well, we are super excited to be here. For everyone here, anyone watching at home, we made a trade. Damon and Ivy now have our youngest child. They're going to camp right now.
Oh boy.
And we said, hey, because we were up in the UP visiting family, we said we could swing down and see you if maybe you could take our kid to camp. And I'll preach at your church. I said that would be a great idea. We'll do that. And darn it, if you don't know, we missed the Burks by how many weeks? Just a couple weeks, right?
Days.
That's crazy, people. Carlton and Luann, if you're watching, this is not good timing, guys, because we knew the Burks back in Detroit for so many years. Alex Burke was in our teen ministry, and Daniel was in our ministry for a little while. Gosh, we love that family so much. And yeah, now I hear they're moving off to Seattle, which, great for them. I'm so glad. I just wish we could have actually laid eyes on them. The last time we came to Appleton was when Carlton was in the hospital, if you remember that.
No.
We just swung through to see Damon and Ivy, and they're like, wait, Carlton? He's actually in the hospital. I was like, well, we have to go see him. Let's go see him right now. So that was the last time we were in Appleton. So, hey guys, I have a sermon for us.
Great.
And it is called Gold. If you're taking notes, you can go ahead and write that down as the title, but that's not going to stay the title. I'm going to do a little switcheroo a little bit later, and I'm going to give you a new title. But right now, you can just write down Gold. The whole point of this lesson is we're going to look at an interesting journey that gold makes in the book of Exodus.
Okay.
And you're like, that has absolutely nothing to do with my life. I guarantee you, this has a lot to do with your life.
Come on.
It has a lot to do with my life. It has a lot to do with all of us. So I'm going to jump right in, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Oh,
So-
we're ready.
Let me start in Exodus 3. I'm going to do this to read off the screen here. Exodus 3. This is when the Israelites were in slavery in Egypt, and they were making their moves. Moses had already been chosen, and then God is kind of making plans to free them. And this is what it says. This is God. And I will make the Egyptians favorably disposed toward this people, so that when you leave, you will not go empty-handed. Every woman is to ask her neighbor and any woman living in her house for articles of silver and gold and for clothing, which you will put on your sons and daughters, and so you will plunder the Egyptians. This is a weird story in the Old Testament, where God is like, hey, you're enslaved right now. I have a plan for you, but there's a weird little thing we're going to do. You're actually going to rob this entire nation. And how are you going to do that? You're just going to ask them for stuff. And I'm going to change their hearts so that when you ask them for stuff, they give it to you. This is super weird. You're going to see this phrase a couple times, favorably disposed. It's a great reminder that God has the power to change people's hearts. Not always the way we want him to, but what you're going to see is that God does this. He moves the Egyptians' hearts so that when they are asked, they're literally like, yeah, here, take my stuff. Now, it doesn't go according to the initial plan. If you remember the book of Exodus, then we have the plagues. Because Pharaoh says, no, you're not taking my people. So we have the plagues. And then at the end of the plagues, we have this. So in Exodus, I don't know, it's not really working. Can you go to the next one? There we go. Exodus 11. Now the Lord had said to Moses, I will bring one more plague on Pharaoh and on Egypt. After that, he will let you go from here. And when he does, he will drive you out completely. Tell the people that men and women, now this is a new one, men and women alike, are to ask their neighbors for articles of silver and gold. The Lord made the Egyptians favorably disposed toward the people. So he says, all right, I know we took a little sidetrack. I had to show them my amazing power. We're still on track. And we're still doing the same thing. You're going to rob this country by asking them for their stuff. And they're going to give it to you. It's super weird. So here we go. Exodus 12. This is how it goes. The Israelites did as Moses instructed and asked the Egyptians for articles of silver and gold and for clothing. The Lord had made the Egyptians favorably disposed towards the people, and they gave them what they asked for, so they plundered the Egyptians. And so you have this story of God freeing people, but he has this extra thing. Your freedom, yeah, that's on the menu, but there's this other thing that we're going to do, and it involves money. And so you're going to need to ask them for their stuff, silver and gold and clothing. And then we're going to carry it as we flee, okay? And they do, and they get the stuff. Now here's what's weird. Where do they go carrying all of this plundered wealth? Right out into the middle of nowhere. And now they're richer than everybody else in the desert. Like if I were to give you suitcases and suitcases of cash and sent you to the moon, you'd be like, thank you? But what does this do me here? I can't, this is useless out here. And in fact, and this is what we're going to be getting at, the cash at the moon would probably be more work than anything that it's worth. And in the same way, these guys go out into the desert, and they probably thought, man, God hooked us up. We're going to use all this gold and silver and stuff to trade and to build our cities, and we've got all these great ideas. They had a plan for what they were going to do with this gold and all this wealth. And yet, it quickly became apparent that their plan was not God's plan. And so now they're stuck carrying all of this gold and silver and clothing and possessions. And this brings me to what we're going to be talking about. The burden of the blessing. The gold felt like a huge blessing until they got out into the desert. And they're like, what is this? This is useless now. Not only does it not help me anything, but now I have a new job, which is carrying around tons and tons of gold. What am I going to do? And so if this is the new title for this lesson.
Okay.
The burden of the blessing.
All right.
And so what happens is they get out there and they don't know what they're supposed to do. Moses leaves and goes up on Mount Sinai, and they're like, now what? He's been gone a long time. And so here's what happens shortly after Moses goes up there. Exodus 32. When the people saw that Moses was so long in coming down from the mountain, they gathered around Aaron and said, come, make us gods who will go before us. As for this fellow Moses, who brought us up out of Egypt, we don't know what has happened to him. Aaron answered them, take off the gold earrings that your wives, your sons, and your daughters are wearing, and bring them to me. So all the people took off their earrings and brought them to Aaron. He took what they handed him and made it into an idol cast in the shape of a calf, fashioning it with a tool. Then he said, these are your gods, Israel, who brought you up out of Egypt. So they got all this gold. What are we going to do with this? And man, it did not take them long to come up with their own idea. Their best use for gold in the desert. It seems pretty obvious to me. Even Aaron, who was there with Moses during all the plagues, he said, I got an idea. Let's make an idol. Now, it doesn't make sense to us, but man, it made way too much sense to them. Here's point 2. Stolen honor. I don't know if we have any veterans. Do you remember the stolen valor thing?
Yeah.
Where guys were dressing up costuming in uniform to get discounts or just to get saluted in the airport. And they'd get called out because their patches made no sense. Their medals, they bought them at the thrift store stuff. People so what infantry? They'd be 375th. And they're like, that doesn't exist. You're making no sense. because they just wanted that honor. And here's what's crazy about our story in the desert, is that we did that as humans. And here's what I mean. So in the desert, Moses is up on Mount Sinai talking to God. He's getting the law, he's getting the Ten Commandments, he's getting, their new history of who they are as a people. It's amazing up there. And while he's up there talking to God, Aaron is down presiding over worship services around this idol, this calf, this golden calf. And here's what's amazing, and we should never lose sight of this. Up at the top, this is the beginning of the Ten Commandments. This is the first statement of the Ten Commandments. I am the Lord your God who brought you out of Egypt, out of the land of slavery. That's how the Ten Commandments starts. I'm the guy that freed you from slavery. And at the same time, at the bottom of the mountain, Aaron is saying this: these are your gods who brought you up out of Egypt. God is trying to very clearly say, I am the guy who's doing everything for you. I'm the guy that's freeing you. I'm the source of your new life and your freedom. I'm your provider. And at the same time, Aaron made something out of all this gold they were carrying around. And he said, this is the thing that brought you up. This is your God, and this is the thing that brought you up out of Egypt. And this might be a fine point, but I really want us to get this, okay? The whole point of this right here is we need to realize there's something in our hearts back then and right now, and that is that we give our idols God qualities.
Right.
Now, what do I mean by that? Back then, it was very simple. There was a part of God's nature where he was like, I'm the source of everything for you. And they said, yeah, but we're going to take that quality of who you are, God, and we're going to attach it to this hunk of metal. And they said, yeah, you're the thing. You're the thing that did all this for me. And in a way, we in America, we don't really understand what idolatry is. Because I think we have a worship problem in America, not an idolatry problem. But in a way, we've been to India several times where they worship carved things. And I've had to sit in on Bible studies where they have to do a Bible study about idol worship. How many idols do you have at home? How many shrines do you walk past on the way to work? Do you ever drop off, flowers or fruit or bananas or milk or money, or is that a thing? And they're like, yeah, I grew up doing that. Well, you're going to have to stop doing that. And so it's this idea, though, that when I think of idolatry, what I think is there's this created thing, whatever it is. It could be money. It could be something made of wood or gold or silver or whatever. It could be a person, because a person is a created thing. It could be my phone. It could be the entertainment I can stream into my brain from my phone. Anything that is a created thing, I start to look at it and give it qualities that only the Creator has. Like, where does my worth come from? Who can make me actually whole in this world? Who can make me feel like I fit? If I say it's a created, if I give that power, that God quality, if I give it to a thing, that's idolatry. In whatever form that takes. Whether that's money or your house or your car or your object of your affection or your whatever. We start to give God qualities, creator qualities to created things. That's idolatry. And this is a perfect example of that. And so that's what they did at the mountain. They took God's honor and God's valor and God's nature, and they said, we're going to put it on this cow. And it was built from the thing that God gave them. Because the burden of carrying around this gold, and what do we do with this? There doesn't seem to be any purpose to this. We're out here in the middle of nowhere. We surely have enough to set aside to make this. So that's what they do. All right, I got a lot more, but we're going to keep moving. It's not until Exodus 25 through 30, later in Exodus, where you start to see the plan for the gold? Why did God tell them to take gold out into the middle of nowhere? It's not until later in Exodus that we start to see his plan for the tabernacle. He had a plan all along. He just didn't tell them what it was. But you read God's plan for the tabernacle, and there is a lot of gold in it. It was his plan that they would have gold set aside to make the lampstands and to make the Ark of the Covenant and to plate things and to decorate things. And this was the plan all along.
Amen.
But he didn't tell them. And in the same way, God may have a plan for your life that you have no idea what it is because he hasn't told you. And that drives us nuts. Like, why in the world would you have a plan for my life and not tell me about it? That's another sermon. But here's where we're going to go, okay? We're going to park on this and spend some time. God said you're going to leave Egypt and you're going to ask everyone for their gold. And I'm going to change their hearts so that they actually give it to you. And fast forward, I'm not going to tell you this now, but I have a plan for that gold. I'm going to have you build a mobile temple. We're gonna tabernacle together. You and I, we're gonna live together in a tent in the wilderness for many years, and we're gonna get good at this relationship. And right in between those two things, they decided to do their own thing with the gold. Okay? So that's the story of the gold in Exodus. The blessing, the purpose, and then the idol. And so that's what we're gonna talk about. We're gonna camp on this.
All right. Okay.
In our lives, there are things that God gives us. And sometimes we pray for them and we beg him for them, and he gives them to us. Miraculously sometimes. And he blesses our life in many, many ways. And most of the time, that blessing has a purpose.
That's right.
He doesn't do it just for no reason. He doesn't do it just so that you feel good about yourself. He has a purpose for the blessing in your life, and yet what comes right in between the two is we make an idol. And the blessings that we have in our life sometimes never achieve their purpose because we turn it into our own version of this calf, this golden calf. The idolatry that comes along through this process is so intense that sometimes the blessing never achieves its purpose. Now, thankfully, God achieved the purpose of the tabernacle. But that gold, if you remember the story of that gold, the golden calf, it wasn't all the gold, it was just the earrings, but there was enough to make the statue, and Moses flipped out when they didn't melt that down and carry it around to use in the tabernacle. He actually ground it up and spread it over the water and made people drink it. It was just a ridiculous punishment that he inflicted on the people. But that gold was gone now. That was nowhere to be found. But this, we have to remember, sometimes the blessing comes with a burden. And when we're talking about our idol, we're talking about those God qualities that we put on things. All right, so I'm just going to camp here for a second. And I want to talk about how we see this in our lives all the time.
Okay.
All the time.
Come on.
And there's times where God has blessed my life, and when I really know it's a blessing is when it's even something that I've prayed for. I've asked him for. And I'll be like, God, please give me this thing. And he gives it to me. And I'm like, oh, thank you, God. And there's things in your life that maybe you have asked God for. And he has given you that thing. And then comes the burden of actually having that thing. So let's run through some examples. How about our spouses? Married people.
That's right.
I bet there are people in this room that begged God for their spouse. They got super spiritual leading up to their wedding. And they were like, God, you are blessing my life, and I'm highly favored because you're putting this amazing woman or this amazing man in my life. Thank you, God. And how long did you realize that there's actually comes a burden with that blessing? There is a burden that comes with the blessing of marriage. In any relationship. Any relationship. As soon as you're now, like, when you were praying to God for this relationship, you were only thinking about all the good things. Like when God gave them the gold, they were thinking about all the stuff they're going to do with this gold. Like, man, we're going to trade stuff. We're going to build cities. It's going to be awesome. They never in a million years thought they were going to have to carry it around the desert.
Right.
In the same way, in our relationships, when we are like fantasizing, we're thinking about how amazing they're going to be. We never think about the fights. We never think about the tears. We never think about the hurts that we hurt them and they hurt us. We never think about all the ways that it is a burden. The humility, men, the humility of being a husband is a burden. It doesn't mean the blessing's not worth it. But boy, you better do your exercises to get ready to carry that burden. Because the humility required to be a good husband is daunting at times. And so then what do we do when we're smacked with the burden of that relationship? Well, we start to put some things on those people that they were never meant to carry. I've seen so many relationships where a person thinks, man, you should make me happy. You should be the one to fill my soul and complete me, and my value starts to come from you. And it's devastating. It's heartbreaking to watch. And we've all been there. None of us is immune to any of this. And then that relationship never fulfills its like preordained purpose. Like maybe God gave you that because he had a vision for what it could be. But we mess it up all the time. And that's just one example. What about a job? Has anyone ever prayed for a job? I have prayed for a job. Multiple jobs. And sometimes the job that you pray for, God gives it to you.
Yes, he does.
But I bet you never prayed for, like, God, give me a boss that just is really mean to me. God, give me, too much overtime and too much stress. Give me, so many opportunities to come home tired and just not giving. You never prayed, God, give me a person at the job that's gonna start to pull my heart away from people. Ladies or men, give me a person of the opposite sex that I'm gonna be tempted with. You never prayed that. You only prayed for the good things, like a paycheck. That's what you were praying for. God, give me this job. I want this job. And he gives it to you, and then guess what? There's a burden that comes with that. Has anyone had a job where there's no burdens whatsoever? I don't think so. Even the best jobs, you'll find a way to be stressed out about it. But when those burdens come, do we make the same mistake where we start to say, this is where my identity comes from. My career is what's going to define me. This is where my value is going to come from. If I get fired, if I get laid off, I'm nothing. So I have to put in the 100 hours a week or whatever it is. We start to put all these God qualities on our job. That God does not want you to think of your job that way.
Come on.
Maybe God gave you that job. What was the purpose? We never asked that question. What's God's purpose for giving me this job? Honestly, guys, it might just be a paycheck. It might be I just need you to be a good worker so that you can provide for your family, pay the bills, whatever. But maybe he wanted a disciple of Jesus to be near these people. Maybe that's why he gave you the job, but we don't know. And sometimes we never fulfill the purpose because we get it all mixed up. Same thing with school. We did campus ministry for a long time, and we still have campus students, but man, the worst of you with your jobs is a normal campus student. They put all of their identity and all of their hopes and dreams in this degree and all of this my scholarship program and my major, and It starts to become like ownership and mastery over them, and it's not good. And we never ask, like, what was God's purpose? Why did God, you prayed for God to let you into the school. And then comes all these burdens, and it just derails you. Why did God bring you to this place? Do we ever ask that? Lastly, just one more example is, I don't know all of you, but I'm willing to bet that there are many talented people in this. Some of you are very smart. Some of you have a lot of, accolades, background. Like you've been places, you've seen things, you've done cool things. Any group of people that we go to, it's like, man, I bet if we sat down, I'd be super impressed with your story. We all have like talents and abilities, and sometimes we make the same mistake, where we start to turn that thing that God gave us. We're like, nah, this is now going to be who I am and what defines me and how I'm measured as a person.
Say it ain't so.
And we never achieve the purpose. We never actually get to the place where God wanted us to be, because we got derailed. In the same way as all these Israelites taking off their earrings and making a golden cow. It's sad. And guys, we could spend another hour just going through more examples of this in our lives. But I want you to think about it. I want you to think about the things that you asked God for, the things that God blessed your life with. And then I want you to think about the reality of what that looked like. That there was a burden. That doesn't mean that He's not a loving God. It doesn't mean that it's not a blessing. It means that there's a burden of the blessing. And when we don't understand that, and we don't handle that well, we start to turn those things into idols. And we never achieve the purpose of those things. But here's my last question. Are you fulfilling your purpose? So we talked about the blessings, and we talked about, this thing that God gave us, and it had a purpose. But God had a purpose for you. And are you fulfilling your purpose? The Israelites had a job in all of this, okay? It was pretty simple. All they had to do was trust God, that he had a plan. I'm going to trust God's plan. When He tells me to do something, I'm going to obey it. And then we saw that. And I just need to persevere when it gets tough. When all the doubt creeps in, when all the trials, the hardships come in, I just need to persevere. Trust, obey, persevere. And that is a thing that we see in our lives all the time. It's a battle. It is a battle to trust God. It is a battle to even believe that He has a plan for us sometimes. It is a battle to obey. There's a lot of times when we're like, yeah, I trust God, but I'm going to choose not to do the thing He wants me to do because I'd rather just fulfill the desires of my flesh. I just want to do what feels good. And then the perseverance. Guys, I think, man, the longer I've been a disciple, I realize I can be such a quitter. Right? Like, I want to do something, and I start doing it, and then I stop doing it. And I don't think we pay attention to that enough. I don't think we pay attention to that enough. But my hope is that we can look into our hearts. We can think about back to this progression that we looked at, where there was a blessing from God, a beautiful blessing from God, a miraculous blessing from God. It also came with a burden. When we don't know how to handle that burden well, we start to give all these things God qualities that they never meant to carry. And what that does is it never lets us achieve our purpose in our life spiritually. So my hope this morning is that we can do a lot of self-reflection. You can look into your own heart and find this stuff. Think about, man, where have I seen that in my own heart, in my own life? But self-reflection is super good, and it's great. Everybody should look within and find where they need to fix stuff. But you should also talk to other people. You should also have relationships in your life where when you see something in your heart, you tell someone else. Someone that you love and trust and know and safe with, and you're like, hey, this is what God has been revealing in me.
Right?
I noticed that this is the blessing that I prayed for, and now it's an idol in my life. Help me. But we need those relationships. We have to have those conversations. My hope is that the next time God blesses you, you're prepared for the burden. When it happens, you're like, I knew that was going to happen. I knew it was going to happen. But I'm not going to fall down that same trap, that same road. I'm not going to go down the same road I always go down. And then we'll start to see those blessings actually fulfill their purpose. And we'll give glory to God because, man, that's so amazing when we see it actually work the way it's supposed to work. Amen? Guys, I love you so much. I'm so glad that we could be here. We're going to stay the whole service and fellowship afterwards. Thank you.